Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to thank my colleague, Mark Udall, for summarizing so well what we're facing out in Colorado. I thought I'd share a few of my thoughts, too. As Senator Udall said, our state is in the midst of unprecedented flooding that has wiped out entire communities in over a dozen counties across Colorado. Last week, rain began to fall across our state, across the Colorado, our Front Range, and it didn't let up. A lot of reports have called this historic, but to get your head around the scale and scope of the damage, it's important to express what that means in hard numbers. In the course of 1 week, Madam President, 21 inches of rain fell in parts of Boulder, including over 9 inches on September 12th alone. The previous all-time high for a single day in Boulder was 4.8 inches in 1919, and they've kept records since 1893. The average annual precipitation in Denver is 14.9 inches for an entire year. On September 12th, 11.5 inches poured down on Aurora, just to give you a sense of the order of magnitude here. Almost as much rain as it typically gets in a year on one day. And it was the same story all across the Colorado Front Range. The result was flooding, destruction, and tragedy on an unprecedented and unmanageable scale. Based on the latest estimates, over 17,000 homes have been seriously damaged. Over 1,500 homes were completely destroyed. Over 2,300 agricultural properties were flooded. In just Larimer County alone, they estimate 200 businesses were destroyed and 500 more were damaged. At least 30 highway bridges are destroyed. At least 20 more are seriously damaged. Hundreds of miles of major roads have been washed away, as Senator Udall said. The floodwaters consume more than 2,000 square miles across 15 counties along the Front Range, an area about twice the size of Rhode Island. And because the rain is just finally letting up, and emergency officials are only beginning to measure the magnitude of this, these numbers could easily go up, and they could go up a lot. As recently as yesterday morning, 4 days after the flooding reached a crisis, over 1,000 Coloradans are still stranded, waiting for evacuation. Hundreds are still not accounted for. Tens of thousands were forced to evacuate. Many have had to abandon their home within minutes, grabbing whatever they could carry and wading through the rising waters to seek shelter and safety. And most tragic of all, Madam President, 8 Coloradans are either confirmed or presumed dead as a result of this storm. Those are just some of the numbers and a taste of the pain that this disaster has brought to cities and counties across our state. As Senator Udall said over the weekend, I joined him and Governor Hickenlooper and others on a helicopter tour of the damage, and from the air, the scope and scale of the destruction boggles the mind. And here is some of what we saw. These photos are taken from the Denver Post and other media. Here's an image showing dozens of vehicles flooded in Greeley, Colorado. Here's a home and a car stranded after a flash flood destroyed a bridge near Golden. Dozens of other bridges collapsed. Let's see what this is a picture of the Big Thompson River washing out the Loveland Water Storage Reservoir. In this picture, young Casey Roy, 9 years old, is looking through a window into her family's basement under 3 feet of water. There are thousands of families in Colorado just like Casey's. And then finally, this image shows the Big Thompson River overflowing and tearing apart Colorado US 34 in the Big Thompson Canyon, another example of the damage to infrastructure across our state. Madam President, how much time is remaining?
No time is remaining.
I'd ask for an additional 5 minutes.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't want to go on too much longer, but in addition to showing these images, I do want to pass along a few of the stories we're hearing from Colorado families from the past week. In Jamestown, a small mountain community of just a few hundred people in the mountains northwest of Boulder, a mudslide destroyed the home of 72-year-old Joey Hallett, a pillar of the community. It killed him. In the hours that followed, Jamestown residents pooled their resources so that no one was without food or shelter. The town, isolated from outside assistance, was split in two, literally split in two by the flood, so they rigged a pulley system to carry food, medicine, and supplies across the rising waters to fellow townspeople. Just outside of Lyons, Colorado, 4 adults, 3 children, and 2 dogs had to scramble up hills and across ledges with no trails to escape the floodwaters. At one point, they literally had to make a human chain across waist-deep water so that nobody would be carried away. So just a couple of the stories from Colorado. There are thousands of stories like these across our state. We know these floods are devastating. We know the loss that some Colorado families feel today is beyond words. We know that some have lost loved ones and many others have lost homes and businesses that took them decades to build. But stories like this remind me that Coloradans are resilient, that the worst disasters often bring out the best in our neighbors. And all across the state, we've seen Coloradans of different ages, different backgrounds, different beliefs pull together and help each other get through this massive storm. And we saw real heroism 1,000 times a day as first responders, our National Guard, risked life and limb to carry the young, the old, and the vulnerable, and the injured to safety. I want to close by saying thank you to the FEMA administrator for his prompt response to our request to declare a disaster. And he would not let me leave the floor without saying that if you are in Boulder, Weld, Adams, or Larimer counties and you are affected, you can go to disasterassistance.gov or call 1-800-621-FEMA to register for disaster assistance. As we move from rescue to recovery, frustration and enormous challenges lie ahead. We know that in the coming weeks, months, and even years, Colorado is going to face a lot of rebuilding. And we will rise to this occasion. We will build it back better than it was before it was destroyed. And we're going to fight every day for Colorado families, many of whom have lost everything, to make sure they're getting the support they need. And with that, I yield the floor.